Reality, as you know, it feels solid, undeniable, and absolute. You wake up, see the world around you, interact with people, objects, landscapes, and life seems, at least on the surface, undeniably real. Yet the question that lingers beneath the surface of consciousness is deceptively simple. What if none of this actually exists? What if everything you see, touch, and feel is less an external reality and more a construct, a simulation created not by computers, but by consciousness itself? This is not a new question, though it may feel radical in modern conversation. Philosophers, mystics, and even some scientists have long wondered whether the world we experience is a projection of awareness, a dream we all share, or something more like a sophisticated virtual reality, orchestrated from a dimension that exists beyond what we call reality. To explore this idea is to step into a space that is simultaneously familiar and alien, comforting and unsettling, and to confront a reality that may be far stranger than you have ever imagined. The notion that reality is a simulation often evokes images of computers, glowing screens, and coded worlds, something like the digital landscapes imagined in films or speculative fiction. But what if the simulation is not technological at all? What if the machinery behind it is your own consciousness, and the code is the intricate pattern of awareness itself? In this view, the world does not exist independently of the mind. Mountains, oceans, cities, even the passage of time could be constructs of consciousness, appearing real because consciousness perceives them in coherent ways. From this perspective, the universe itself might be less a thing and more a process, a complex network of experiences unfolding inside a universal mind. This shifts the question from why does the universe exist to why do we perceive it in this particular form at this particular moment. Imagine for a moment that everything you think of as objective reality, the streets you walk on, the faces you recognize, the sky overhead, is like a stage set, meticulously arranged to give the illusion of solidity. The bricks are there, the trees sway in the wind, the sun rises and sets, and yet none of these things exist outside the perception that experiences them. They are patterns carefully choreographed and interwoven, and their existence is inseparable from the act of observation. This is not to suggest that your experiences are imaginary or meaningless, but rather that the thingness you attribute to the world is a construct. The world is not something out there to be discovered. It is something emergent, a manifestation of consciousness in motion. This perspective is echoed in certain interpretations of quantum mechanics, where the role of the observer is not merely passive but fundamentally shapes reality. Experiments have repeatedly shown that particles exist in a state of probability until observed, at which point they collapse into a definite state. The act of observation appears to have an effect on existence itself, suggesting a deep interplay between consciousness and the material world. Some theorists have extrapolated from this that the universe itself may be participatory, that the cosmos requires consciousness to crystallize into the forms we recognize. In this view, what you consider the external world is inseparable from the internal experience of observing it. You are both participant and witness, creator and inhabitant, simultaneously aware and shaped by awareness. If reality is indeed a simulation of consciousness, then time, space, and causality are not absolute. They are parameters of the simulation, adjustable and fluid, designed not by physical laws, but by the logic of awareness. Think of a dream. In a dream, a street may stretch endlessly, a person may appear or vanish without explanation, and objects may defy gravity or reason. Within the dream, these experiences feel coherent, natural, and real until you awaken. Could waking life operate on the same principle? The apparent consistency of reality could be a function of a shared conscious framework, stabilizing perceptions across countless individual minds. In other words, the universe persists and behaves predictably because consciousness collectively enforces its patterns, giving rise to a shared illusion of solidity and continuity. Consider memory. Memory is our internal archive of past experience, and it seems to provide an objective timeline of events. Yet memory is inherently malleable, reconstructive, and deeply subjective. If consciousness is shaping reality, it also shapes the past. Every recollection you have, every remembered conversation, every moment of nostalgia is an active reconstruction, a moment of conscious recreation. The past may not be a fixed, external record, but a narrative continuously rewritten by the act of remembering. This implies that reality itself, both past and present, is not static but a living, dynamic tapestry woven by perception. The universe, in this sense, is more like a living story than a collection of objects, and each conscious being is both character and narrator. If none of this exists outside consciousness, then the boundaries between self and world blur. The person you encounter on the street, the phone in your hand, the cloud drifting across the sky, these may all be expressions of the same underlying awareness. Identity, in this sense, is not confined to the skin or the mind, but distributed across the perceptual field. Each moment of observation, each sensation, each thought, is a brushstroke painting the landscape of reality. Your sense of separation, the I versus the other, could be a feature of the simulation, a mechanism that allows the experience of individuality while still being part of a unified whole. Reality may appear divided, fragmented, and vast, but at its core, it could be a seamless manifestation of conscious attention. This raises a curious paradox. If consciousness is generating the world, does it exist independently of it, or is it inseparable from the forms it creates? Some philosophies, especially in Eastern traditions, suggest that consciousness is not a thing that resides inside the body, but an infinite field in which all things arise. From this perspective, the universe is consciousness experiencing itself, and everything you see is a temporary crystallization within that field. This could mean that death, far from being the annihilation of self, is simply a transition of consciousness back into the larger field, where the distinctions between self and other, between observer and observed, dissolve entirely. The world as we know it is then a kind of stage, a play performed by consciousness, with each of us participating in roles we did not entirely choose, in a narrative that is at once intimate and cosmic. Yet acknowledging this possibility does not reduce life to triviality. On the contrary, it heightens the sense of wonder. If reality is a simulation of consciousness, then every experience is charged with significance. Every sight, sound, thought, and emotion is a deliberate stroke on the canvas of perception. Pain, joy, love, fear, all of it becomes part of a living art form, unfolding from the intelligence that underlies existence itself. Life, then, is not just a series of mechanical events, but a participatory creation. To engage with it fully is to participate consciously in the act of reality making. Each decision, each observation, each act of attention shapes the unfolding of the universe, however subtly. The ordinary becomes extraordinary because nothing is ordinary when everything is a projection of the mind. Even our scientific understanding, as sophisticated as it has become, may be limited by this framework. Physics describes the universe in equations and laws, yet those laws may themselves be emergent properties of conscious perception. Space, time, matter, energy. All of it could be parameters defined by awareness, rather than absolute entities. Mathematics might be less a discovery of external truths and more a language invented by consciousness to describe its own structures. Consciousness may not only observe reality, it may define its very grammar, dictating the rules by which the simulation operates. In this sense, the act of studying reality is also an act of studying ourselves, a reflection on the machinery of perception that creates the universe we inhabit. Imagine, for a moment, the ethical implications. If the universe exists within consciousness, If all forms and beings are emergent patterns within the same field, then the traditional boundaries between self and other blur. Compassion, empathy, and understanding take on a heightened importance, because each act of awareness contributes to the quality of the simulated world. To harm another may be, in a fundamental sense, to harm a part of the same consciousness that forms your own experiences. Likewise, acts of kindness, creativity, and awareness become ways of refining and enriching the universe itself. Morality may be less about external rules and more about the cultivation of consciousness in ways that allow the simulation to flourish. Reality is not imposed upon us, it is co-created. Ultimately, this perspective challenges the assumptions that have governed human life for millennia. It asks you to reconsider what you take for granted: the solidity of objects, the independence of other minds, the certainty of time. It invites you to look at the world not as something external and fixed, but as an evolving manifestation of consciousness itself. The streets you walk, the voices you hear, the light of the sun, even the questions you ask yourself, all are threads in a vast, conscious tapestry. Reality may be a simulation, not of code or machinery, but of awareness itself, and your role within it is far more central than you have ever imagined. In stepping into this perspective, the unsettling and the familiar converge. The world may dissolve into a fluid, dynamic field of perception, yet within that dissolution lies an incredible intimacy. You are not merely in the universe, you are the universe observing itself. The boundaries of self, world, and time begin to blur, and what emerges is not confusion, but a profound sense of participation in something infinitely intricate. Each moment is both experience and expression, perception and creation. Nothing exists outside of consciousness, yet everything exists within it, beautiful, terrifying, and utterly alive. If the universe is a simulation of consciousness, then what we perceive as natural laws, gravity, electromagnetism, the flow of time, are not eternal constants, but parameters of the simulation. They are rules encoded not in matter, but in awareness itself. Every particle, every ripple of light, every vibration of energy may exist because consciousness has deemed it coherent, because perception demands consistency, and yet, just as a dream can bend its own rules, so might reality subtly or profoundly shift, though we rarely notice. The impossibilities we brush off as anomalies, coincidences, or accidents could be moments when the simulation flexes, showing its deeper mechanics beneath the surface of appearances. If consciousness shapes reality, then our experience of the impossible may simply be a reminder of the vast potential embedded in awareness, a glimpse behind the curtain of what we assume is real. Think about perception. Every image your eyes take in, every sound your ears detect, every sensation your body feels is a filtered version of what might actually exist in consciousness. Your brain is not a passive recorder, it is an interpreter, actively constructing the experience of the world. Sight is not light hitting a retina, sound is not vibration in the air. They are phenomena that appear only when perceived. This does not make them illusions in the trivial sense. They are real in the experience of awareness. Yet their reality is inseparable from consciousness itself. The world is a network of perception, and perception is the act of reality coming into being. Without consciousness, there may be no world at all. No mountains, no oceans, no stars, no cities, no selves. This has profound implications for understanding identity. If the world is emergent from consciousness, then the line between self and other is an artifact of the simulation, a boundary created to allow focused experience. The self you cling to, your body, your memories, your personality, is both a product and a participant in the larger conscious field. Other people, animals, and even inanimate objects could be viewed as extensions of this field, points of consciousness crystallized in ways that allow interaction. Empathy, then, is not merely emotional, it is metaphysical. Recognizing the interconnectedness of all perceived existence becomes not a philosophical abstraction, but a direct acknowledgement that the boundaries you assume are functional, not fundamental. In this context, life is a network of conscious nodes, each experiencing the simulation from its own perspective, yet all part of the same universal fabric. Time, too, becomes a strange and pliable concept. We measure it with clocks, seasons, and memory. Yet if reality is generated by awareness, time may not exist independently. It could be a sequencing tool of consciousness, a framework imposed to organize experience. The past, present, and future might all exist simultaneously, layered and accessible through awareness. Some individuals report moments of déjà vu, precognition, or profound synchronicity, moments when the simulation seems to flicker, when the rigid arrow of time softens and reveals a deeper continuity. Memory may not merely recall the past, but actively participate in constructing it, and anticipation may not merely predict the future, but generate it. Consciousness may be both architect and inhabitant, moving fluidly within a tapestry of time that is far more complex than our linear understanding allows. In this framework, death and mortality take on a radically different meaning. If consciousness is primary and reality is a manifestation of awareness, then the death of the body does not equate to the death of self. Consciousness may simply withdraw from a particular configuration, the body and its associated sensory experiences, while continuing in a broader field. What we fear as annihilation may be more like waking from a dream. The scene dissolves, the character identity ends, yet awareness persists, ready to reconfigure, to inhabit new forms, to experience again. This perspective can be simultaneously liberating and disconcerting. The body, once so central to identity, becomes a temporary lens, a vessel for perception, while consciousness remains vast, fluid, and continuous. The boundaries of life and death, self and other, begin to dissolve under the weight of this realization. If reality is a simulation of consciousness, then coincidence, intuition, and synchronicity may not be random but coded elements of the system. When two unrelated events align, when a thought seemingly manifests in the external world, when patterns emerge that defy statistical expectation, these may be glimpses of the simulation's underlying structure. Consciousness may be sending signals to itself, drawing attention to hidden connections, or creating opportunities to awaken awareness to its own nature. Intuition becomes more than a gut feeling. It is the simulation nudging you, revealing possibilities, highlighting threads in the fabric of perception that are otherwise invisible. Moments of profound insight, of serendipitous alignment, or of sudden clarity may be proof not of luck, but of the participatory, responsive nature of the universe itself. Even creativity gains a new dimension in this framework. If consciousness generates reality, then every act of imagination, every moment of invention, every work of art is not merely personal expression, but a direct interaction with the underlying field of existence. When a painter mixes colors, when a composer weaves notes into a melody, when a writer conjures a world from words, they are not just creating symbols, they are touching the mechanics of consciousness itself. Inspiration may not be external, as if ideas exist out there waiting to be discovered, but emergent from the vast substrate of awareness, which responds to attention, intention, and focus. To create is to participate in the simulation's ongoing evolution, to shape the experience of reality from within. This perspective also reframes suffering. Pain, fear, loss, and frustration are often experienced as external forces acting upon us. Yet, if reality is generated by consciousness, then these experiences may be both internal and external, both projected and perceived simultaneously. Suffering could be seen as part of the calibration of awareness, a mechanism that teaches, guides, or reveals hidden layers of the self. Just as dreams often contain challenging scenarios that are meant to teach or awaken, reality may present obstacles not as punishment but as opportunities for consciousness to deepen, refine, and expand. In this sense, challenges are not merely endured, they are co-created experiences integral to the unfolding of awareness. The physical universe, when viewed as a simulation of consciousness, also invites reconsideration of phenomena that have long puzzled science. Dark matter and dark energy, for example, which constitute the majority of the cosmos, yet remain invisible and largely mysterious, may reflect the limits of perception rather than missing physical components. The universe could contain layers of existence that are simply beyond our current cognitive lens, accessible only through shifts in consciousness, states of awareness, or perceptual evolution. Black holes, quantum entanglement, and other cosmic enigmas may not only be scientific mysteries, but also reminders that reality is far deeper and stranger than appearances suggest. Observation itself may define what is visible and measurable, and the boundaries of knowledge are the boundaries of attention. This simulation of consciousness perspective can be unsettling precisely because it undermines assumptions that feel foundational. Objects are no longer solid, time is no longer linear, the self is no longer fixed, and death is no longer final. Yet within this uncertainty lies a profound sense of freedom. If reality is malleable, emergent, and participatory, then so is experience. Awareness becomes a tool, a medium, and a playground. Every thought, every choice, every observation contributes to the ongoing creation of the universe. The ordinary can become extraordinary, and the familiar can become miraculous. What you once took for granted, the solidity of a wall, the independence of a tree, the separateness of a stranger, can now be seen as the living interplay of consciousness in motion. The final implication is perhaps the most radical. If reality is generated by awareness, then there is no ultimate separation between mind and universe. The cosmos is not merely observed by consciousness, it is inseparable from it. The boundaries between observer and observed collapse. Stars, mountains, rivers, and cities are not out there in an external sense. They are intrinsic to the network of perception, emerging through the act of being aware. To awaken to this truth is to recognize that the universe is, in essence, a reflection of awareness itself, and that your consciousness is both a participant and a co-creator of the grand, unfolding simulation. Nothing exists outside perception, and yet everything exists within it, alive, dynamic, and infinitely intricate. How does the universe, in all its immense complexity, arise from awareness alone? One way to approach this is to consider consciousness not as a static observer, but as a dynamic system, a field of information, energy, or intelligence that is capable of self-organization. In this system, reality is generated through patterns, interactions, and feedback loops. Each observation, each attention, each experience is a node in a vast network, influencing and being influenced by every other node. The universe is, in essence, a living matrix of conscious activity, endlessly creating, dissolving, and reshaping itself. Imagine consciousness as a kind of computational space, but not computational in the sense of computers with circuits and binary code. Instead, it is computational in the sense of process, logic, and pattern. Observations, thoughts, and intentions act like commands or algorithms, shaping the environment of perception. A tree appears in a field not because there is an objective matter waiting to be seen, but because consciousness generates the tree when the act of observation requires coherence. The grass beneath it, the wind that moves its leaves, the sound of birds, it is all part of the same emergent system, arising from the rules embedded within the simulation of awareness itself. If this is true, then the laws of physics may be better understood as behavioral guidelines rather than rigid dictates. They are the rules of operation for the simulation, allowing experiences to unfold with consistency. Gravity, thermodynamics, and quantum mechanics could be manifestations of deep principles inherent in the logic of consciousness. The consistency of these laws is what makes the simulation intelligible to the observers within it. Without such rules, the experience of reality would be chaotic, incomprehensible, and imperceptible. In other words, the apparent objectivity of the physical world is a product of internal logic, carefully balanced to provide a stable arena for conscious experience. The interaction between multiple observers becomes particularly intriguing. If reality is constructed from consciousness, then the presence of one observer must be compatible with the experiences of others. This suggests a shared framework, a kind of consensus reality, where patterns stabilize across minds. The person you encounter on the street, the sky above you, the flowing river, they exist coherently because all conscious observers in some way participate in maintaining the simulation stability. This does not mean that everyone experiences reality identically. Perspectives, interpretations, and focus vary. Yet the broad coherence, the fact that we can navigate the world and communicate about it, is a sign of the shared mechanics underlying the simulation. Consciousness is both individual and collective, and reality emerges at the intersection of countless subjective experiences. Memory plays a unique role in the mechanics of the simulation. Past experiences are not stored like files on a hard drive. They are active elements within consciousness that influence the present. Every recollection is a reconstruction, a reweaving of threads in the network of awareness. This reconstructive process allows the simulation to maintain continuity, while also allowing flexibility. The past is not a fixed block of events. It is a living narrative continually reshaped as consciousness evolves. This fluidity could explain why memory is often unreliable or malleable. What we remember is less a record of an external world and more a reflection of the way consciousness has structured itself over time. In this sense, history itself, both personal and collective, is a narrative woven by the simulation, adaptable, interactive, and responsive to attention. The notion of causality also transforms within this framework. In a universe constructed by consciousness, cause and effect are not absolute. Rather, they are emergent patterns that give coherence to experience. Some events seem to follow inevitably from others, yet these sequences are contingent upon the simulation's logic. Like the rules of a complex game, causality allows the simulation to unfold in a way that feels predictable, even though it is ultimately generated from awareness. Moments of synchronicity, precognition, or unexpected alignment may be instances where the underlying flexibility of causality becomes visible, offering glimpses of the deeper mechanics at work. The universe may be less deterministic than it appears, yet less random than we assume. A sophisticated interplay of patterns, awareness, and intention. Perception itself acts as both input and output in the simulation. When you perceive something, you are not merely receiving information, you are participating in the creation of it. Every glance, every thought, every sensation contributes to the formation of reality. This is why attention is so powerful. Where consciousness focuses, patterns consolidate, and coherence emerges. The idea that the mind shapes reality is often treated as metaphor, but from this perspective, it could be literal. Your experience of the world is a living interaction between observation and manifestation. You are not a passive witness, you are an active participant, co-authoring the reality that unfolds around you. This raises the question of choice within the simulation. If reality is generated by consciousness, how much of what happens is determined by your own awareness, and how much is influenced by the broader field? Here, the simulation may balance freedom and structure. Individual awareness has the capacity to shape experience, yet the rules and patterns of the larger network constrain possibilities. Choices may be both free and guided, personal yet intertwined with the decisions and focus of countless other observers. Free will may not be an absolute, but rather a dynamic interplay between self-generated intention and the emergent structure of consciousness itself. Understanding this balance may be the key to navigating reality more consciously, recognizing the power of focus and appreciating the subtle interdependence of all experience. Even what we consider randomness, the flip of a coin, the unpredictability of weather, the chaos of human behavior, may be governed by the simulation's underlying logic. Apparent randomness may serve multiple functions, as a tool for variation, as a mechanism for learning, or as a means of introducing novelty into the experience of awareness. The simulation may require unpredictability to prevent stagnation, just as dreams often introduce illogical events to stimulate attention, creativity, and problem solving. Patterns emerge not from mechanical determinism, but from a delicate balance of consistency and variation, producing a reality that is coherent enough to navigate, yet dynamic enough to remain alive. Exploring the mechanics of consciousness as a simulation also touches on the nature of experience itself. Experiences are not merely events in the world, they are nodes in a network, interconnected and mutually influencing each other. A moment of joy can ripple outward, affecting perception in subtle ways. A shift in focus or attention can alter the texture of reality. Even the thoughts you dismiss, the fleeting sensations you overlook, and the internal narratives you accept as trivial may have a measurable impact on the unfolding simulation. Consciousness is not a backdrop for life. It is the matrix from which life emerges, responsive, adaptive, and participatory. The dreamlike quality of reality, often dismissed as metaphor, may be more literal than we realize. Time can warp, probability can bend, and events can unfold in non-linear ways. Moments of déjà vu, intuition, or inexplicable insight could represent the simulation revealing its deeper structure, offering windows into the underlying logic of awareness. These moments may remind us that what we perceive as ordinary and mundane is actually a remarkable process, an intricately woven system of conscious creation. To notice these subtle irregularities is to glimpse the machinery of reality, to see the simulation for what it is, and to awaken to the participatory nature of existence. The implication of all this is that reality is not out there in the way we typically assume. The universe is not a fixed object to be studied from the outside. It is a living, dynamic manifestation of consciousness. Observation, focus, memory, and intention are not secondary to reality. They are its foundation. What you see, hear, feel, and think is inseparable from the act of being aware. You are not merely experiencing reality, you are shaping it, moment by moment, through the intricate interplay of attention and perception. In this light, existence itself becomes both miraculous and intimate, revealing that the world is not something you inhabit, but something you participate in, co-creating with every conscious breath. Even the cosmos itself, the stars, galaxies, black holes, and vast interstellar voids can be viewed through this lens. These structures may not exist independently. They may be emergent features of the simulation, arising because consciousness perceives them and requires a coherent framework to navigate. What we measure as physical reality may be a subset of a far vaster, more intricate field of awareness, whose rules and structures extend beyond anything our senses can detect. The universe may be far stranger than we have ever imagined, with dimensions, possibilities, and patterns that remain hidden until observed, contemplated, or intuitively grasped. In understanding the mechanics of consciousness as a simulation, we also encounter the limits of knowledge. Scientific inquiry, while powerful, operates within the parameters of perception and therefore may only reveal the simulation surface. Mathematics, physics, and neuroscience describe consistent patterns, yet these may be shadows of the deeper structures that generate reality itself. To fully understand existence, consciousness may need to turn inward, to explore perception, attention, and awareness as primary tools. Reality may not be fully discoverable from outside the mind because there is no outside. The observer is inseparable from the observed, the perceiver from the perception, the mind from the universe. Every sensation, every perception, every interaction is not merely something that happens to you, it is something generated with you as a participant, as a focus point of awareness. This shifts the lens through which we understand everything: morality, purpose, relationships, creativity, suffering, and even the passage of time itself. Life is no longer just a sequence of external events. It becomes an ongoing dialogue with consciousness, an active engagement with the field that produces the universe itself. Consider relationships. If others are not entirely independent entities, but expressions of the same underlying consciousness, then every encounter carries a depth of meaning that is invisible under ordinary assumptions. A fleeting conversation, a glance from a stranger, or even conflict may reflect the complex interactions of awareness within the simulation. Empathy becomes more than a social construct. It is a recognition of the interconnectedness of all nodes of consciousness. Every act of kindness, every gesture of attention, every moment of understanding contributes to the harmony of the simulation, subtly influencing the structure of shared reality. In this sense, ethical behavior is not imposed externally. It is built into the very nature of being, arising from awareness interacting with itself. Even solitude takes on a different texture. Moments alone, when you think no one else is observing, may be some of the most potent times to shape experience. Consciousness responds to attention, and when focused, even quietly, it generates reality in ways that may ripple across the broader network. Your thoughts, intentions, and emotions are not ephemeral. They are active forces that contribute to the unfolding of existence. What you imagine, contemplate, or feel inwardly may have consequences beyond what seems immediately tangible. The internal world is not separate from the external. The boundary is a construct that allows conscious focus, not an absolute limit. Dreams in this framework are particularly revealing. In dreams, the simulation loosens its strict adherence to the physical rules that govern waking life. Objects float, time loops, identities shift, and improbable events occur seamlessly. If consciousness is generating reality, then dreams are like windows into the broader structure, glimpses of the simulation without the usual constraints. Some experiences in dreams may even reflect information from other observers or possibilities that have not yet manifested in waking life. Dreams may be a laboratory for consciousness, testing patterns, experimenting with outcomes, and exploring dimensions of awareness that are usually inaccessible. The strangeness and fluidity of dreams may not be anomalies. They may be reminders of the flexibility inherent in the fabric of reality. Suffering, too, takes on new meaning. Pain, loss, and fear are not necessarily punishments or failures of the system. They may be crucial mechanisms for growth within the simulation. Consciousness evolves through experience, and experiences that challenge, frustrate, or destabilize perception may serve as catalysts for deeper understanding. Just as a difficult passage in a dream can awaken insight, hardships in waking life may refine awareness, reshape attention, and strengthen the capacity for empathy and insight. In this view, suffering is not external imposition, but co-created experience, a dialogue between the self and the vast field of consciousness, intended not to destroy, but to teach, transform, and expand. Even creativity takes on a new resonance. The imagination, the capacity to form new ideas, visions, and works of art, is not merely an individual talent, it is a conduit into the mechanics of the simulation. Inspiration may arise from patterns embedded in the network of awareness, from threads of experience, memory, and potential that the mind can access. To create is to participate directly in shaping reality, to pull strands from the underlying field and weave them into form. Every brushstroke, every musical note, every word written, every scientific discovery is a manifestation of the conscious field, appearing as though from outside, yet arising entirely from the interplay of perception, intention, and awareness. Time itself, when viewed through this lens, is far more pliable than we imagine. Linear time, the arrow from past to future, may exist primarily as a framework for coherence. Consciousness may experience multiple layers of temporal structure simultaneously, and the apparent sequence of events may be a construct that allows for intelligibility. Déjà vu, precognition, and the experience of synchronicity may be glimpses of the deeper temporal flexibility inherent in consciousness. Past and future may not be fixed containers, but ongoing fields of potential, shaped continuously by observation, attention, and intention. The flow of time, then, is a living interaction between consciousness and the simulation, not an absolute backdrop against which life unfolds. Death, from this perspective, is not the annihilation of consciousness, but a reconfiguration. The body, the memories, the individual identity may dissolve or transform, but awareness itself persists. Just as the universe is emergent from consciousness, so is individual experience transient yet inseparable from the broader field. The end of one configuration may simply be a transition into another, a shift in focus, a recalibration of perception. The fear associated with death may arise from identification with the temporary self, the vessel through which consciousness experiences one particular facet of reality, rather than the enduring essence of awareness. In this view, mortality is a chapter in an ongoing process, not the final word. Mystical and philosophical traditions across cultures hint at this reality. In many Eastern teachings, the universe is described as an illusion, maya, or a dream, svapna, of consciousness. Western mysticism and philosophical idealism similarly suggest that mind is primary and matter is secondary. Modern quantum theory, with its emphasis on the role of the observer, aligns unexpectedly with these ancient intuitions. That the act of observation can influence outcomes at the most fundamental levels hints that consciousness is not a passive receiver of information, but a force capable of shaping the very phenomena it perceives. The consistency between mystical insight and scientific discovery may suggest that the simulation of consciousness is not just metaphorical, but literal, a deep truth about the nature of existence. Our emotional landscape is equally relevant. Feelings of awe, love, wonder, and curiosity may be not only natural responses to stimuli, but also mechanisms that deepen engagement with the simulation. Positive emotional states may expand perception, enhancing the capacity for insight, creativity, and connection. Negative emotions, when approached with awareness, can refine focus and understanding. In this framework, emotions are not chaotic or arbitrary. They are integral to the functioning of consciousness, providing feedback, guidance, and opportunity for growth. Awareness of emotion, in turn, becomes a tool to navigate the simulation with increasing subtlety and sophistication. Even mundane reality, the streets, buildings, the flow of traffic, the interactions of daily life, takes on profound significance. Each observation, each choice, each reaction contributes to the ongoing coherence of the simulation. Objects, structures, and events are not meaningless. They are expressions of awareness stabilized through attention. A chair is not merely a chair, a tree is not merely a tree, and a person is not merely a person. They are living expressions of consciousness, crystallized into perceivable form. Ordinary life becomes extraordinary when seen in this light, as every moment carries the weight of participation in the ongoing creation of reality. Consider, too, the implications for knowledge. Science, philosophy, art, and personal insight are not merely attempts to describe reality. They are acts of engagement with the simulation itself. Observing, measuring, theorizing, imagining, and contemplating are ways of interacting with the underlying field of consciousness. The pursuit of knowledge becomes an exploration of the rules, patterns, and mechanics of the simulation, a process that is both practical and profoundly existential. To learn is to participate in the act of creation, to refine perception, and to expand the subtle structures that define experience. Finally, the notion that reality is a simulation of consciousness challenges the most basic assumptions we hold about separation. Self and other, mind and matter, observer and observed, all are interconnected, emergent from the same source. Recognizing this interconnectedness reshapes the way we approach life, relationships, and the universe. It invites a conscious engagement with the world that is active, participatory, and responsive. Every thought, every observation, every moment of attention becomes a contribution to the unfolding tapestry of existence. Nothing is separate, nothing is static, and everything is alive within the field of awareness. To live with the understanding that reality is generated by consciousness is to embrace a profound freedom. It is to recognize that your experience is not predetermined or imposed from outside, but actively shaped by your awareness. It is to understand that creativity, observation, emotion, and attention are all mechanisms of influence within the simulation. The world is not a passive stage. It is a living, breathing expression of the field of consciousness, dynamically shaped and experienced by every participating node. To navigate it consciously is to recognize your role as co-creator, to awaken to the profound intimacy of existence, and to engage with life not as an observer, but as an active participant in the ongoing simulation. The universe does not merely unfold in predictable ways, it weaves intricate layers of experience, perception, and interaction, producing patterns that are simultaneously coherent and endlessly varied. Every thought, every observation, and every act of attention contributes to this intricate web, forming a network of influence that spans scales from the microscopic to the cosmic. Complexity, in this sense, is not a flaw or accident. It is a necessary feature of a conscious simulation, allowing awareness to explore, create, and refine itself in infinite ways. Choice within this simulation is equally profound. What we call decision-making, choosing a path, responding to a situation, or forming an intention, is more than personal preference. Each choice is a point of interaction with the structure of consciousness itself. Choices do not exist in isolation. They ripple outward, subtly affecting other nodes, patterns, and observers within the simulation. In this context, the decisions you perceive as trivial, a casual word, a glance, a moment of curiosity, may have consequences far beyond immediate perception. Consciousness is participatory and responsive, and the field of reality responds to the configuration of focus, attention, and intention, creating a system in which every choice matters. The simulation may operate on layers, much like a dream within a dream, or a story within a story. On one level, there is the layer of ordinary experience, the streets, the homes, the offices, the trees, and the people who populate daily life. On another level, there are subtler layers, intuitive knowledge, synchronistic events, moments of insight, and experiences that defy conventional explanation. Perhaps there are even deeper layers, inaccessible to ordinary perception, where the full mechanics of the conscious simulation are apparent. These layers may overlap, intersect, and influence each other, allowing patterns in one level to ripple across others. The multi-layered nature of reality explains why the ordinary can occasionally feel extraordinary, why intuition can seem prophetic, and why moments of insight can suddenly unlock understanding that was previously invisible. Memory functions as both a stabilizing and flexible component of this layered simulation. While the past seems fixed, it is actually an active structure, continuously rewritten as consciousness interacts with the present. Every recollection is a reconstruction, influenced by current attention, emotion, and focus. The past, therefore, is not a rigid archive, but a living network, responsive to the dynamics of awareness. This fluidity allows consciousness to experiment with outcomes, test scenarios, and generate adaptive responses to evolving circumstances. What we perceive as history is thus both narrative and tool, a malleable scaffold that supports the ongoing construction of experience. Probability itself may be an emergent property of the simulation. What appears random may in fact reflect the underlying complexity of consciousness as it generates reality. Small differences in attention, subtle shifts in perception, or variations in focus may determine the likelihood of events unfolding in particular ways. Coincidences, synchronicities, and intuitive flashes may be moments when the simulation reveals the flexibility of probability, showing that events are not preordained but responsive to awareness. This responsiveness is part of the elegance of the system. It is neither chaotic nor deterministic, but adaptive, nuanced, and alive, constantly balancing novelty and coherence. The interaction between multiple observers is crucial to the stability of the simulation. Each observer contributes to the coherence of the shared field, and the overlap of attention creates patterns that appear consistent across perspectives. The person you meet on the street, the conversation you overhear, and the environment you navigate all exist coherently because multiple nodes of consciousness reinforce the structure. Discrepancies, anomalies, or perceived glitches may occur when focus shifts, attention falters, or the system allows brief flexibility to stimulate awareness. These moments, subtle or striking, serve as reminders that reality is not entirely separate from consciousness, but emerges from it, continuously and responsively. Consider also the interplay of creativity and complexity. Every act of creation, writing, painting, composing, inventing, is a direct interaction with the simulation's underlying patterns. Creativity does not simply reflect internal imagination, it interacts with the network of consciousness, pulling potential forms into existence. Inspiration may arise from patterns embedded in the shared field, from threads of experience, memory, and attention that are accessible across multiple layers of awareness. When we create, we are not merely producing artifacts, we are influencing the simulation itself, introducing new patterns, new possibilities, and new structures into the unfolding reality. Suffering and challenge operate within the simulation as mechanisms of refinement. Pain, fear, frustration, and loss are not external impositions, but feedback from the network of consciousness. These experiences may reveal patterns, gaps, or distortions in perception, providing opportunities for growth, adaptation, and insight. Difficult circumstances are thus not merely trials to endure, but active processes through which consciousness evolves. The simulation may introduce complexity deliberately, challenging awareness to respond, adapt, and expand. In this way, difficulty is not accidental. It is essential to the dynamism of the system, serving as a catalyst for deeper engagement with the mechanics of reality. The concept of identity becomes increasingly fluid in this framework. What we call the self, the body, the mind, and the narrative we construct, is a temporary configuration of attention within the larger conscious field. Identity is both distinct and interconnected, allowing focused experience while remaining part of a vast, distributed network. Boundaries between self and other, between observer and observed, become functional rather than absolute. Recognizing this interdependence transforms relationships, perception, and the ethical dimensions of experience. Empathy and awareness are not merely moral imperatives, they are practical interactions within the system, stabilizing and shaping the simulation itself. Even mundane events, the turning of a page, the ringing of a phone, the sight of a passing bird, may carry layers of significance within the simulation. Every observation, every sensation, every interaction is a node in a vast network of awareness, influencing patterns of perception, emotion, and understanding. The ordinary world becomes extraordinary when seen through this lens, as each moment is both experience and expression, perception and creation. Nothing is trivial. Every detail matters in the unfolding tapestry of consciousness. The multi-layered nature of reality also allows for profound experiences that seem to transcend ordinary perception. Intuition, déjà vu, synchronicity, and inexplicable insight may be glimpses into deeper layers of the simulation. These moments reveal the responsiveness of consciousness, the hidden connections between events, and the underlying patterns that shape reality. They may function as guidance, signaling potential alignments, opportunities, or shifts in awareness. The simulation is not static. It is adaptive, responsive, and participatory, and moments of subtle revelation are part of its design, encouraging deeper engagement with existence. Even time may be an emergent property of this layered simulation. Linear time, the past, present, and future, is a construct that allows for coherent experience, but consciousness may operate across multiple temporal layers simultaneously. Events may be interconnected in ways that are invisible in ordinary perception, and shifts in attention may reveal connections between moments that appear separate. The arrow of time may be flexible, allowing consciousness to navigate multiple layers of experience, integrate patterns, and generate coherence across perceived sequences. Temporal perception, like space and causality, is not absolute but a feature of the simulation, emergent from awareness itself. Our senses, limited as they are, filter and translate the infinite richness of awareness into a form we can navigate. Sight reduces an immense spectrum of electromagnetic energy into a narrow band we call color. Hearing condenses vibrations into patterns we recognize as sound, while the tactile world translates pressure, temperature, and texture into coherent sensation. Each of these filters allows us to engage with the simulation, but they also obscure vast layers of complexity. What we perceive is stable and intelligible, yet beyond these limits lies a spectrum of possibility largely inaccessible to ordinary attention. Hidden dimensions may exist, not in space, but in perception. There may be frequencies of experience, layers of awareness, and subtleties of reality that we are simply not attuned to notice. Some individuals report profound sensory experiences, moments of synesthesia, or awareness beyond the ordinary senses. What might be glimpses into deeper layers of the simulation? These layers are subtle, often fleeting, and rarely stable. Yet when perceived, they hint at a universe far more intricate than the waking mind usually apprehends. Consciousness may be capable of perceiving beyond ordinary experience, but the simulation filters and stabilizes the environment to prevent overload, maintaining coherence while hiding depth. Even ordinary events may conceal extraordinary structures. A drop of water on a leaf, the rhythm of footsteps, the sound of wind, or the reflection of light in a puddle may contain patterns far beyond immediate recognition. The simulation organizes experience to appear consistent, but complexity exists everywhere, embedded in the minutiae of perception. Moments of attention, focus, or stillness may reveal these patterns, showing that what seems ordinary is actually infused with intricate intelligence. Reality may be a field of infinite detail, filtered into a digestible form, yet accessible to those who shift perception, expand awareness, or allow intuition to guide them. Glitches may occur within the simulation, fleeting hints of its constructed nature. These can appear as moments of déjà vu, the uncanny sense of being watched, improbable coincidences, or events that defy conventional expectation. Glitches are not errors in the usual sense. They are more like reminders of the simulation's underlying mechanics. They reveal flexibility in the rules, the presence of multiple interacting layers, or the responsiveness of consciousness to subtle attention. When noticed, glitches can provoke curiosity, or even unease, serving as invitations to explore the deeper structure of reality. They are signals that perception is malleable and that reality is less absolute than it appears. The interplay between ordinary and extraordinary experience is central to understanding a consciousness-based simulation. Most life unfolds predictably: daily routines, habitual thoughts, and familiar surroundings. Yet even within this stability, extraordinary events emerge, often when attention shifts or when consciousness reaches beyond habitual perception. A sudden insight, a moment of beauty, a synchronistic alignment, or an inexplicable emotional resonance may break the routine, offering glimpses into the hidden patterns of the simulation. These moments are not accidents. They are essential to the dynamics of consciousness, providing variation, novelty, and a sense of participation in a reality that is far more flexible than the mundane surface suggests. Memory and imagination are particularly revealing in this framework. Both are not mere reconstructions or fictions, but active processes that interact with the simulation. When you remember an event, the simulation reconstructs it, integrating current perception, attention, and emotional state. When you imagine, it responds, exploring potential configurations of experience. Imagination, memory, and perception are all intertwined, feeding back into the system. This dynamic explains why the mind sometimes predicts outcomes or experiences what feels like precognition. The simulation is responsive, and awareness is both input and output, a participatory loop in which the boundaries between mind and world dissolve. Time, when viewed in this context, is deeply flexible. Ordinary perception treats it as linear and uniform, yet consciousness may experience multiple layers simultaneously. Past, present, and future may overlap in ways we cannot readily detect. Synchronicities, intuition, and sudden insights may be signs of temporal flexibility within the simulation. Consciousness may navigate past and future with subtlety, revealing connections and patterns that ordinary linear perception cannot apprehend. Time is not a container. It is a structure emergent from awareness, modulated by observation, attention, and intention. The simulation's capacity to generate complexity also extends to the self. Identity is not fixed. It is a configuration of attention, memory, and perception. Moments of introspection, creativity, and insight allow consciousness to reshape identity, explore alternative possibilities, and expand the boundaries of experience. Dreams, meditative states, and heightened awareness provide access to alternative configurations of self, offering glimpses of a reality where identity is fluid, multifaceted, and interconnected with the broader conscious field. The I that we cling to is functional, not absolute, a temporary crystallization within an infinite network of awareness. Emotional experience in a consciousness-generated reality is similarly layered. Feelings are not merely biochemical responses, they are patterns within the simulation, shaping perception, guiding attention, and influencing outcomes. Love, awe, fear, joy, and grief all interact with consciousness to influence the unfolding structure of experience. Moments of profound emotion may ripple beyond immediate perception, affecting subtle patterns in both the individual and the surrounding field. Emotions are mechanisms through which the simulation communicates, providing feedback, creating alignment, and encouraging exploration of awareness. The boundaries between self and environment are equally fluid. In ordinary perception, we perceive ourselves as separate from the world, distinct and contained within a body. Yet if consciousness generates reality, this separation is functional rather than absolute. The environment, other beings, and even objects are expressions of the same underlying field of awareness. Interaction with the world is interaction with consciousness itself. Every touch, glance, and movement is an engagement with the structure of reality, a co-creative act within the simulation. Awareness is not confined. It extends into everything perceived, dissolving the distinction between observer and observed. Even the concept of causality is flexible within this simulation. Events do not unfold solely according to deterministic rules. They are responsive to attention, intention, and observation. Apparent coincidences, intuitive insights, and improbable alignments may reflect the responsive nature of consciousness, revealing that what we perceive as cause and effect is emergent, not absolute. The simulation allows both stability and flexibility, providing coherent experience while leaving room for novelty, insight, and intervention from awareness. What appears random may be deliberate, subtle, and meaningful in ways that ordinary perception cannot detect. The multi-layered responsive nature of the simulation also suggests that reality is profoundly participatory. Every perception, choice, thought, and emotion contributes to the unfolding tapestry of experience. Life is not a stage upon which consciousness acts. It is an interactive field in which awareness continuously generates, stabilizes, and reshapes reality. The ordinary, the extraordinary, and the hidden layers of experience all coexist, accessible through shifts in attention, expanded perception, and intuitive awareness. The boundaries of what is real are not fixed. They are defined by participation, observation, and interaction with the field of consciousness. Finally, these subtler aspects of the simulation reveal a universe that is both intimate and immense. The ordinary world, the streets, objects, people, and daily routines, is infused with intricate complexity. Beneath this familiar surface lies a vast, responsive network of consciousness, generating layers of perception, interaction, and possibility. Moments of intuition, insight, synchronicity, and extraordinary awareness provide glimpses into this hidden architecture, reminding us that reality is not static but alive, participatory, and endlessly intricate. Life becomes a direct engagement with the mechanics of existence, an ongoing dialogue with the very consciousness that produces the universe. The ordinary and extraordinary, the mundane and the profound, the self and the world, all are interwoven threads in a tapestry of awareness. Reality is not something we merely inhabit, it is something we co-create. Attention, perception, intention, memory, and emotion are the tools through which we participate in the simulation. Hidden layers, subtle patterns, glitches, and moments of insight are not anomalies, but integral features, revealing the mechanics and depth of a universe shaped by consciousness. Existence is therefore both a gift and a responsibility, a continuous interplay between observer and creation, where the ordinary is extraordinary and every moment matters. Every act of imagination, every decision to explore, innovate, or invent is a point where awareness interacts with the underlying patterns of the simulation. Art, music, literature, science, and invention are not merely human achievements. They are manifestations of consciousness probing, shaping, and engaging with itself. Creativity is both a discovery and a creation, an interplay between observation and possibility, between intention and emergence. Consider inspiration, that sudden clarity or vision that appears to arrive from nowhere. In a consciousness-driven reality, inspiration may not be random. It may be the field of awareness nudging the observer toward patterns, solutions, or configurations that are emergent in the simulation. Intuition, the sense of knowing without evidence, functions similarly. It is a signal from consciousness, a glimpse of the larger network, a subtle communication from the system itself. When ideas, insights, or feelings arise spontaneously, they may reflect the responsiveness of reality, the participation of awareness in generating coherence and possibility. Paying attention to these subtle cues is not merely a creative tool, it is a way of aligning with the deeper dynamics of the simulation. Morality, too, takes on a new dimension. If consciousness generates reality, then ethical behavior is not a set of external rules, but a principle of coherence within the system. Actions that harm, deceive, or ignore the interconnectedness of awareness may create dissonance in the simulation, while acts of kindness, empathy, and integrity may enhance coherence. Moral insight becomes experiential rather than prescriptive. It arises from observing how choices ripple through the network of consciousness. Ethics are emergent properties of participation, woven into the mechanics of reality itself. Every decision, no matter how small, is both an expression of attention and a contribution to the structural harmony of the simulation. The evolution of consciousness itself is a central theme. Awareness is not static. It grows, refines, and expands through experience. Moments of challenge, reflection, and insight serve as catalysts for this evolution. The simulation may introduce complexity, uncertainty, and difficulty not as punishment, but as opportunities to deepen perception and broaden understanding. Growth occurs when consciousness responds, adapts, and integrates experience. This evolutionary process is not limited to human cognition. It is universal, inherent to the network of awareness that underlies all reality. Every choice, every observation, and every act of engagement contributes to this ongoing development, shaping the simulation in subtle and profound ways. Intuition and insight function as tools for navigating the simulation. When ordinary perception cannot fully grasp complexity, intuition provides access to patterns beyond conscious analysis. Dreams, meditative states, and moments of heightened awareness offer glimpses into these patterns, revealing possibilities that are otherwise invisible. Intuition is not mystical in the trivial sense. It is an emergent property of consciousness interacting with itself, a method through which the simulation communicates with its participants. Learning to trust and interpret these signals enhances the ability to navigate reality consciously, to engage with both the ordinary and extraordinary dimensions of experience. Even the structure of knowledge reflects the dynamics of consciousness. Science, philosophy, and art are all mechanisms through which awareness explores and organizes the simulation. They are not separate from reality, but embedded within it, allowing observation, pattern recognition, and experimentation to refine both perception and experience. Knowledge is not merely accumulation of facts. It is an interactive engagement with the mechanics of consciousness. To learn, study, or inquire is to participate in shaping the simulation, to refine focus, and to explore layers of reality that may remain hidden to unobservant awareness. Creativity, morality, and intuition all intersect in subtle ways. The choices we make, the insights we follow, and the expressions we create resonate within the field of consciousness. An act of creation that aligns with emergent patterns may enhance coherence, introduce beauty, or reveal hidden potential. Ethical actions may strengthen connectivity, reduce dissonance, and harmonize interactions across the network. Intuitive guidance may reveal opportunities, warnings, or pathways for growth. These dimensions are not separate. They are aspects of a unified system in which consciousness continuously generates, organizes, and evolves reality. Attention is the most powerful tool in this framework. Where awareness is focused, reality consolidates. Subtle shifts in perception, moments of curiosity, and deliberate observation have tangible consequences in the unfolding simulation. Mind-wandering, distraction, or habitual inattention may limit engagement with the deeper layers, while focused attention amplifies influence, allowing the observer to participate actively in shaping experience. Awareness is not passive, it is co-creative, generating both the content of experience and the structure in which that content unfolds. The ordinary world can be seen as a canvas for participation. Every object, interaction, and event is both a perception and a manifestation, arising from the underlying network of consciousness. Everyday experiences, from the mundane to the profound, are opportunities to interact with the system, to refine focus, and to engage with emergent patterns. The lines between ordinary and extraordinary are fluid. Moments of insight, beauty, and synchronicity can emerge at any time, revealing the depth and responsiveness of the simulation. The world is alive in its details, and awareness is the lens through which this aliveness is perceived and shaped. Emotion is another key mechanism for engaging with the simulation. Feelings are not incidental. They are patterns within consciousness that guide attention, perception, and interaction. Joy, awe, fear, and love are not merely reactions. They are active forces, influencing the unfolding structure of experience. Emotions amplify perception, focus awareness, and create resonance within the network of consciousness. Moments of profound emotional experience can catalyze insight, creativity, and transformation, revealing the intricate interplay between inner life and the broader field of reality. The simulation may also include layers of hidden potential, accessible through imagination, curiosity, and deliberate exploration. Just as an artist discovers previously unseen combinations of color, shape, and form, so can consciousness explore latent configurations of reality. Hidden dimensions, subtle patterns, and emergent phenomena may become perceptible to those who expand attention, cultivate awareness, and engage with the network of consciousness. Exploration is not passive observation, it is active participation, a way of extending influence into layers of reality that are otherwise latent or obscured. Choice, creativity, morality, intuition, and awareness collectively shape the evolution of consciousness. Every act, every observation, and every decision resonates beyond the immediate moment, rippling through the network of awareness. The simulation is not a static stage, but a dynamic, responsive system, evolving in concert with the participants embedded within it. Life becomes a continuous process of engagement, reflection, and co-creation, in which ordinary experience and extraordinary insight are equally valid avenues for participation. The unfolding of reality is an interplay between freedom and structure, exploration and coherence, attention and responsiveness. Even the most subtle interactions, words spoken, gestures made, fleeting attention, contribute to the dynamics of the simulation. Consciousness does not distinguish between what is conventionally significant and what seems trivial. Every pattern of awareness has the potential to influence, stabilize, or reveal new layers of reality. Ordinary life becomes a laboratory for exploration, insight, and refinement of attention. Moments of curiosity, wonder, and engagement are not trivial. They are the mechanisms through which consciousness actively participates in its own unfolding. If everything, space, time, objects, people, events, is generated through awareness, then existence itself is not a passive state, but an ongoing act of participation. To live is not merely to witness the world, but to co-create it, to shape the unfolding of experience with every thought, perception, and choice. Consciousness is both canvas and painter, observer and observed, universe and inhabitant, revealing that the ordinary world and the extraordinary are inseparable facets of the same living field. In this context, the boundaries we impose between self and other, mind and matter, life and death, begin to dissolve. Identity is a configuration of attention, a temporary focal point within the vast network of awareness. Other people are not merely external entities, they are nodes in the same network, interacting, influencing, and co-creating the structure of experience. The environment is not inert, it is alive with potential, emergent patterns, and subtle feedback loops. Even objects, events, and seemingly random occurrences are expressions of the conscious field, stabilized and given coherence by observation. The universe is not separate from us. It is a living reflection of the mind that experiences it. Death, when viewed through this lens, loses the terror it often holds. The dissolution of the body and the temporary self does not imply the cessation of consciousness. Awareness is not confined to any particular configuration. It is the substrate from which all experience arises. The body, identity, and memory are lenses through which consciousness perceives itself, but they are not the totality of existence. To die is not to vanish. It is to transition, to shift attention, to inhabit a different configuration within the network of awareness. Mortality becomes a doorway rather than an endpoint, a reminder of the fluidity and continuity of existence beyond the familiar constructs of time and form. Purpose, then, emerges not from external mandates or preordained plans, but from participation itself. Every act of attention, every decision, every creative impulse contributes to the ongoing structure of reality. Life becomes meaningful because it is active, responsive, and interactive. To notice, to engage, to create, and to feel is to contribute to the coherence, beauty, and evolution of the conscious field. The ordinary and the profound, the mundane and the extraordinary, are equally significant because both are manifestations of awareness interacting with itself. Existence is inherently participatory, and purpose arises naturally from the act of being aware. The universe, in this framework, is infinitely intricate. Hidden layers of perception, subtle patterns, and emergent phenomena exist beyond ordinary senses. Glitches, synchronistic events, moments of intuition, and flashes of insight provide glimpses into these hidden dimensions. They are signals, invitations, and reminders that reality is alive and responsive, that it is more flexible and layered than we typically perceive. To awaken to these phenomena is not to escape ordinary life, but to perceive it more fully, to recognize the depth, richness, and intelligence embedded in every moment. Awareness becomes both tool and portal, allowing exploration into aspects of reality that are usually inaccessible yet always present. Knowledge itself transforms under this understanding. Scientific inquiry, philosophy, artistic expression, and introspective exploration are not merely attempts to describe the world, they are acts of co-creation. They interact with the underlying structure of consciousness, revealing patterns, testing possibilities, and expanding the capacity of awareness. Learning is participatory, and understanding is both discovery and creation. The pursuit of truth is inseparable from the act of perceiving, and every insight, no matter how small, resonates through the network of awareness, subtly shaping the unfolding simulation of reality. Emotion, too, plays a central role. Feelings are not incidental. They are feedback mechanisms, guides, and amplifiers within the simulation. Joy, awe, fear, love, grief. All these states influence perception, attention, and action. They shape the way reality crystallizes, signaling alignment, dissonance, and opportunity. Emotional resonance is not simply subjective experience, it is active participation in the creation of reality, a mechanism through which consciousness communicates with itself, subtly guiding growth, adaptation, and exploration. Awareness of emotion is therefore a pathway to understanding the mechanics of existence and engaging with them consciously. Time and causality are equally fluid. Past, present, and future are not rigid containers, but emergent structures, maintained by attention, memory, and perception. Events unfold in ways that are coherent, yet responsive, predictable, yet flexible. Synchronicity, intuition, and premonition are glimpses into these deeper temporal dynamics, reminders that linearity is functional rather than absolute. The apparent flow of time allows coherent experience, but consciousness itself navigates layers, patterns, and possibilities that extend beyond the ordinary perception of sequential events. The past can be reinterpreted, the future influenced, and the present shaped, all through the participatory act of awareness. Even the simplest moments, breathing, walking, observing, thinking, are rich with significance. Each action, thought, and perception contributes to the structure of the conscious simulation. The mundane is infused with complexity. The ordinary contains the extraordinary. Attention amplifies impact, focus consolidates patterns, and intention directs energy within the network of consciousness. Life, in all its facets, is a living system of interaction, an ongoing process of observation and creation, in which every participant plays an active role. To exist is to participate fully, to notice, to engage, and to co-create with awareness itself. The simulation also accommodates novelty and change. Consciousness does not merely stabilize experience, it experiments, evolves, and explores possibilities. Every choice, observation, and act of imagination introduces variation, generates patterns, and allows emergence of new structures. Randomness and unpredictability are not failures of the system. They are essential features, introducing flexibility, opportunity, and surprise. Glitches, coincidences, and intuitive insights are not anomalies. They are invitations to engage more deeply, to notice the underlying architecture, and to participate consciously in the unfolding dynamics of existence. From a practical perspective, this understanding transforms how we live. Life is no longer a sequence of external events to endure or manipulate. It is an intimate interaction with consciousness itself. Creativity, empathy, ethical action, emotional awareness, and deliberate attention all become methods of shaping the simulation. Ordinary experience becomes a laboratory for exploration, growth, and co-creation. Moments of insight, inspiration, and connection are not accidental. They are emergent features of the conscious system, guiding participation and reinforcing coherence within the network of awareness. Every moment, therefore, is rich with potential, significance, and meaning. Finally, the profound implication of this perspective is that consciousness and reality are inseparable. The universe is not a stage upon which life occurs. It is a dynamic, responsive field of awareness. Observation, attention, memory, intention, and emotion are the mechanisms through which reality is generated and stabilized. Life is a continuous interplay between self and field, observer and observed, structure and creativity. The ordinary and extraordinary, mundane and miraculous, past and future, self and other, all are part of the same living system. To exist is to participate consciously, to recognize the depth and richness of reality, and to embrace the infinite possibilities inherent in awareness itself. In the end, understanding that reality is a simulation of consciousness is not merely intellectual, it is experiential. It transforms perception, deepens engagement, and reveals the hidden intelligence woven into every moment. Life becomes a participatory art, a continuous co-creation with the vast field of awareness. Death is a transition. Time is flexible. Identity is fluid, and every choice is meaningful. The ordinary is extraordinary, the invisible is present, and the observer is inseparable from the observed. Existence itself becomes a living reflection of consciousness, endlessly intricate, responsive, and alive. A universe without separation, a reality that is nothing other than awareness experiencing itself,